Hey, y'all. I hope y'all doing well. This is your girl, Tanetta Clay, here at the podcast, the Social Worker Coach, the podcast. I want to say hello and welcome to this particular podcast episode. And of course, YouTube, welcome you all as well, because this is being recorded on YouTube as well, so that you all can see this, even though I'm looking kind of a crazy mess today, my hair all over the place, but that's all right. I'm still going to do this anyway, regardless. Has to be done. I guess I put it that way, because that's what I promised y'all. So, y'all, let's go ahead and get into this. This is lesson number 8. Part 2 of 2, Self-Control, by the book Napoleon Hill, The Law of Success. So like I said, I know I've already read a little portion of self-control in the first part, but you may not have seen all that. Seen it yet. So make sure that you get your butt on down, scroll on down to, of course, find that one and go ahead and check it out, and then come back and listen to this. So like I said, I'm reading all the chapters in this book, The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill, until I'm done. It has 16 lessons. So like I said, we're in the middle of lesson number 8. About self-control. So let's go ahead and get into this. Oh, and before I do again, make sure y'all subscribe to this podcast, The Social Worker Coach. And then make sure y'all subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're on the podcast, it's Tonetta Clay, my name. You will see it, of course, in the description of this episode. And then if you're on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast at. It is based on Spotify, but it's on Google Podcasts. I'm all over the place. I guess I put it that way. So wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, make sure that you subscribe there to the Social Worker Coach. Because I'm a social worker and I'm a coach. And I'm a baker too. So I'm part-time with my creativity. So let me go ahead and get into this, y'all. Lesson 8, Self-Control. 2 of 3, I'm sorry. Just as the great fundamental laws of life are wrapped up in the commonest sort of everyday experiences that most of us never notice, so are the real opportunities often hidden in the seemingly unimportant transactions of life. Ask the next 10 people whom you meet why they have not accomplished more in their lives, in their respective lives, lines of endeavor. And at least 9 of them will tell you that opportunity does not come easy around their way. Go a step farther and analyze each of those 9 accurately by observing their actions for one single day. And the chances are that you will find that every one of them is turning away the finest sort of opportunities every hour of the day. One day I went to visit a friend who was associated with a commercial school in the capacity of a solicitor. When I asked him how he was getting along, he replied, "Rotten. I see a large number of people, but I'm not making enough sales to give me a good living. In fact, my account with the school is overdrawn, and I'm thinking about changing positions as there is no opportunity here." It happened that I was on my vacation and had 10 days time that I could use as I wished. So I challenged his remark that he had no opportunity by telling him that I can turn his position into $250 a week in a week's time and show him how to make it worth that every week after. He looked at me in amazement and asked me not to joke with him over so serious a matter. When he was finally convinced that I was in the earnest, he ventured to inquire how I would perform the miracle. Then I asked him if he had ever heard of organized effort, to which he replied, "What do you mean by organized effort?" I informed him that I had reference to the direction of his efforts in such a manner that he would enroll from 5 to 10 students with the same amount of effort that he had been putting into the enrollment of one or none. He said he was willing to be shown, so I gave him instructions to arrange for me to speak before the employees of one local department store. He made the appointment and I delivered the address. In my talk, I outlined a plan through which the employees could not only increase their ability so that they could earn more money in their present positions, but it also offered them an opportunity to prepare themselves for greater responsibilities and better positions. Following my talk, which of course was designed for that purpose, my friend enrolled 8 of those employees for the night courses in the commercial school which he represented. The following night, he booked me for a similar address before the employees of a laundry. In the following address, he enrolled 3 more students, 2 of them young women who worked over the washing machines at the hardest sort of labor. 2 days later, he booked me for an address before the employees of one of the local banks. And following the address, he enrolled 4 more students, making a total of 15 students. And the entire time consumed was not more than 6 hours, including the time required for the delivery of the addresses and the enrollment of the students. My friend's commission on the transaction was a little over $400. These places of employment were within 15 minutes walk of this man's place of business, but he had never thought of looking there for business. Neither had he ever thought of allying himself with a speaker who could assist him in group selling. That man now owns a splendid commercial school of his own. Wow. And I am informed that his net income last year was over $10,000. No opportunities come your way. Perhaps they could. They come, but you don't see them. Perhaps you will see them in the future as you are preparing yourself through the aid of the reading course on the law of success, this book, so that you can recognize an opportunity when you see it. The sixth lesson of this course is on the subject of imagination, which was the chief factor that entered into the transaction that I have just related. Imagination plus a definite plan plus self-confidence plus action were the main factors that entered into this transaction. You know how to use all of these, and before you shall have finished this lesson, you will understand how to direct these factors through self-control. Now let us examine the scope of meaning of the term self-control as it is used in connection with this course by describing the general conduct of a person who possesses it. A person with well-developed self-control does not indulge in hatred, envy, jealousy, fear, revenge, or any similar destructive emotions. A person with well-developed self-control does not go into ecstasies or become ungovernably enthusiastic over anything or anybody. Greed and selfishness and self-approval beyond the point of accurate self-analysis and appreciation of one's actual merits indicate lack of self-control in one of the most dangerous forms. Self-confidence is one of the most important essentials of success, but when this faculty is developed beyond the point of reason, it becomes very dangerous. That's the heat, y'all. Yeah, I heard something making a noise, a rumble. Self-sacrifice is a commendable quality, but when it is carried to extremes, it also becomes one of the dangerous forms of lack of self-control. You owe it to yourself not to permit your emotions to place your happiness in keeping of another person. Love is essential for happiness, but the person who loves so deeply that his or her happiness is placed entirely in the hands of another resembles the little lamb who crept into the den of the nice, gentle little wolf and begged to be permitted to lie down and go to sleep, or the canary bird that persisted in playing with the cat's whiskers. A person with well-developed self-control will not permit himself to be influenced by the cynic or the pessimist, nor will he permit another person to do his thinking for him. A person with well-developed self-control will stimulate his imagination and his enthusiasm until they have produced action. But he will then control that action and not permit it to control him. A person with well-developed self-control will never, under any circumstances, slander another person or seek revenge for any cause whatsoever. A person with self-control will not hate those who do not agree with him. Instead, he will endeavor to understand the reason for their disagreement and profit by it. We come now to a form of lack of self-control, which causes more grief than all other forms combined. It is the habit of forming opinions before studying the facts. We will not analyze this particular form in detail in this lesson for the reason that is fully covered in Lesson 11 on accurate thought. But the subject of self-control cannot be covered without at least a passing reference to this common evil to which we are all more or less addicted. No one has the right to form any opinion that is not based upon that which he believes to be facts or upon a reasonable hypothesis. Yet, if you will observe yourself carefully, you will watch yourself forming opinions on nothing more substantial than your desire for a thing to be or not to be. Another grievous form of lack of self-control is the spending habit. I have reference, of course, to the habit of spending beyond one's needs. This habit has become so prevalent since the close of the World War that is alarming. A well-known economist has prophesied that 3 more generations will transform the United States from the richest country in the world to the poorest if the children are not taught the savings habit as a part of their training in both the schools and the homes. On every hand, we see people buying automobiles on the installment plan instead of buying homes. Within the last 15 years, the automobile fad has become so popular that literally tens of thousands of people are now mortgaging their futures to own cars. Prominent scientists have seen a keen sense of humor, has prophesied that not only will this habit grow lean bank accounts, but if persisted in, it will eventually grow babies whose legs will have become transformed into wheels. This is a speed mad, money spending age in which we are living, and the uppermost thought in the minds of those of the most and the uppermost thought in the minds of most of us is to live faster than our neighbors. Not long ago, the general manager of a concern that employs 600 men and women became alarmed over the large number of employees who were who were becoming involved with loan sharks, and decided to put an end to this evil. When he completed his investigation, he found that only 9% of his employees had savings accounts, and the other 91% had no money ahead. 75% were in debt in one form or another, some of them being hopelessly involved financially. Of those who were in debt, 210 owned automobiles. We are creatures of imitation. We find it hard to resist the temptation to do that which we see others doing. If our neighbor buys a Buick, we must imitate him, and if we cannot scrape together enough to make the first payment on that Buick, we must at least have a Ford. Meanwhile, we take no heed of the morrow. The old-fashioned rainy day nest egg has become obsolete. We live from day to day. We buy our coal by the pound and our flour in 5-pound sacks, thereby paying a third more for it more than it costs because it is distributed in small quantities. Of course, this warning does not apply to you. It is intended only for those who are binding themselves in the chains of poverty by spending beyond their earning capacity, and who have not yet heard that there are definite laws which must be observed by all who would attain success. The automobile is one of the modern wonders of the world, but it is more often a luxury than it is a necessity. Tens of thousands of people who are now stepping on the gas at a lively pace are going to see some dangerous skidding when their rainy days arrive. It requires considerable self-control to use the streetcars as a means of transportation when people all around us are driving automobiles. But all who exercise this self-control are practically sure to see the day when many who are now driving cars will either be riding the streetcars or walking. It was this modern tendency to spend the entire income which prompted Henry Ford to safeguard his employees with certain restrictions when he established his famous $5 a day minimum wage scale. 20 years ago, if a boy wanted a wagon, he fashioned the wheels out of boards and had the pleasure of building it himself. Now, if a boy wants a wagon, he cries for it and he gets it. Sounds like today, don't it? Even though this was about 100 years ago. Lack of self-control is being developed in the oncoming generations by their parents who have been victims of the spending habit. 3 generations ago, practically any boy could mend his own shoes with a family cobbling outfit. Today, the boy takes his shoes to the corner shop and pays $1.75 for heels and half soles. And this habit is by no means confined to the rich and well-to-do classes. I repeat, the spending habit is turning America into a nation of paupers. I am safe in assuming that you are struggling to attain success, for if you are not, you will not be reading this course. Let me remind you, then, that a little savings account will attract many an opportunity to you that will not come your way without it. The size of the account is not so important as it is the fact that you have established a savings habit. For this habit marks you as a person who exercises an important form of self-control. The modern tendency of those who work for a salary is to spend it all. If a man who receives $3,000 a year and manages to get along on it fairly well receives an increase of $1,000 a year, does he continue to live on $3,000 and place the increased portion of his income in his savings bank? No. Not unless he is one of the few who have developed the savings habit. Then what does he do with this additional $1,000? He trades in the old automobile and buys a more expensive one. And at the end of the year, he is poorer on a $4,000 income than he was the previous year on a $3,000 income. This is a modern 20th century model, American, that I am describing, and you will be lucky if, upon analysis, you do not find yourself to be one of this class. Somewhere between the miser who hoards every penny he gets his hands on in an old sock and the man who spends every cent he can earn and borrow, there is a happy medium. And if you enjoy life with reasonable assurance of average freedom and contentment, you must find this halfway point and adopt it as a part of your self-control program. Self-discipline is the most essential factor in the development of personal power because it enables you to control your appetite and your tendency to spend more than you earn and your habit of striking back at those who offend you and the other destructive habits which cause you to dissipate your energies through non-productive effort that takes on forms too numerous to be cataloged in this lesson. Very early in my public career, I was shocked when I learned how many people there are who devote most of their energies to tearing down that which the builders construct. By some queer turn of the wheel of fate, one of these destroyers crossed my path by making it his business to destroy my reputation. At first, I was inclined to strike back at him, but as I sat on my typewriter late one night, a thought came to me which changed my entire attitude towards this man. Removing the sheet of paper that was in my typewriter, I inserted another one, which I stated this thought in these words. You have a tremendous advantage over the man who does you any injury. You have it within your power to forgive him while he has no such advantage over you. As I finished writing those lines, I made up my mind that I had come to the point at which I had to decide upon a policy that would serve as a guide concerning my attitude towards those who criticize my work or try to destroy my reputation. I reached this decision by reasoning something after this fashion. Two courses of action were open to me. I could waste much of my time and energy striking back at those who would try to destroy me, or I could devote this energy to furthering my life work and let the result of that work serve as my sole answer to all who would criticize my efforts or question my motives. I decided upon the latter as being the better policy and adopted that. By their deeds you shall know them. If your deeds are constructive and you are at peace within yourself, in your own heart, you will not find it necessary to stop and explain your motives, for they will explain themselves. The world soon forgets its destroyers. It builds its monuments to and bestows its honors upon none but its builders. Keep this fact in mind, and you will more easily reconcile yourself to the policy of refusing to waste your energies by striking back at those who offend you. Every person who amounts to anything in this world comes to a point, sooner or later, at which he is forced to settle this question of policy towards his enemies, or if you want, and if you want proof that it pays to exercise sufficient self-control to refrain from dissipating your vital energies by striking back, then study the records of all who have risen to high stations in life and observe how carefully they curb this destructive habit. It is a well-known fact that no man ever reached a high station in life without opposition of a violent nature from jealous or envious enemies. The late President Warren G. Harding and ex-President Wilson and John H. Patterson of the National Cash Register Company and scores of others whom I could mention were victims of this cruel tendency of a certain type of depraved man to destroy a reputation. But these men wasted no time explaining or striking back at their enemies. They exercised self-control. I do not know, but these attacks on these men were in public life, cruel and unjust and untruthful as they often are, serve a good purpose. In my own case, I know that I made a discovery that was of great value to me. As a result, a series of bitter attacks which a contemporary journalist launched against me. I paid no attention to the attacks for 4 or 5 years until they became so bold that I decided to override my policy and strike back at my antagonists. I sat down at the typewriter and began to write. In all of my experience as a writer, I do not believe I ever assembled such a collection of biting adjectives as those which I used on this occasion. The more I wrote, the more angrier I became, until I had written all that I could think of on this subject. As the last line finished, a strange feeling came over me, and it was not a feeling of bitterness towards the man who had tried to injure me. It was a feeling of compassion, of sympathy, of forgiveness. But usually I feel sorry for the person, so they seem like they're lonely and don't have anything else to do. But let me get back to the story. I had unconsciously psychoanalyzed myself by releasing over the keys of my typewriter the repressed emotions of hate and resentment, which I had been unintentionally gathering in my subconscious mind over a long period of time. Now, if I find myself becoming angry, I sit down in my typewriter and write it out of my system. Then throw away the manuscript or file it away as an exhibit for my scrapbook to which I can refer back in the years to come. After the evolutionary process, have carried me still higher in the realm of understanding. Repressed emotions, especially the emotions of hatred, resemble a bomb that has been constructed of high explosives, and unless they are handled with as much understanding of their nature as an expert would handle a bomb, they are as dangerous. Let me get some water, y'all. A bomb, a bomb may be rendered harmless by explosion in an open field or by disintegration in a bath of the proper sort. Also, a feeling of anger or hatred may be rendered harmless by giving expression to it in a manner that harmonizes with the principle of psychoanalysis. Before you can achieve success in higher and broader sense, you must gain such through thorough self-control over yourself that you will be a person of poise. You are the product of at least a million years of evolutionary change. For countless generations preceding you, nature has been tempting and refining the materials that have gone into your makeup. Step by step, she has removed from the generations that have preceded you the animal instincts and baser passions until she has produced in you the finest specimen of animal that lives. She has endowed you, through this slow evolutionary process, with reason and poise and balance, sufficient to enable you to control and do with yourself whatever you will. No other animal has ever been endowed with such self-control as you possess. You have been endowed with the power to use the most highly organized form of energy known to man, that of thought. It is not probable that thought is the closest connecting link there is between the material, physical things of this world and the world of divinity. You have not only the power to think, but what is 1,000 times more important still, you have the power to control your thoughts and direct them to your bidding. We are coming now to the really important part of this lesson. Read slowly and meditatively. I approach this part of the lesson almost with fear and trembling, for it brings us face to face with a subject which but few men are qualified to discuss with reasonable intelligence. I just want to look and see how many pages left in this chapter, y'all. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure that I can at least read a lot of this. Well, yeah. Okay. I repeat, you have the power to control your thoughts and make them do your bidding. Your brain may be likened to a dynamo in this respect, that it generates or sets in motion the mysterious energy called thought. The stimuli that start your brain into action are of two sorts. One is autosuggestion and the other is suggestion. Excuse me. You can select the material out of which your thinking is produced, and that is autosuggestion or self-suggestion. You can permit others to select the material out of which your thinking is produced, and that is suggestion. It is a humiliating fact that most thought is produced by outside suggestions of others, and it's more humiliating still to have to admit that the majority of us accept the suggestions without either examining it or questioning its soundness. We read the daily papers as though every word were based upon fact. We are swayed by the gossip and idle chatter of others as though every word were true. Thought is the only thing over which you have absolute control, yet, unless you are a proverbial exception, which is about 1 of every 10,000, you permit other people to enter the sacred mansion of your mind and there deposit through suggestion their troubles and woes, adversities and falsehoods, just as though you do not have the power to close the door and keep them out. You have within your control the power to select the material that constitutes the dominating thoughts of your mind, and just as surely you are reading these lines, those thoughts which dominate your mind will bring you success or failure according to their nature. The fact that thought is the only thing over which you have absolute control is, within itself, of the most profound significance, as the strongest suggests that thought is your nearest approach to divinity on this earthly plane. This fact also carries another highly impressive suggestion, namely, that thought is your most important tool, the one which you may shape your worldly destiny according to your own liking. Surely divine providence did not make thought the sole power over which you have absolute control without associating that power potentialities which, if understood and developed, would stagger the imagination. Self-control is solely a matter of thought control. That's an interesting way to put that. Please read the foregoing sentence aloud. Read it thoughtfully and meditate over it before reading further, because it is, without doubt, the most important single sentence of this entire course. You are studying this course, presumably because you are earnestly seeking truth and understanding sufficient to enable you to attain some high station in life. Y'all, it's morning time. I'm still yawning. Wake up, Tanetta, wake up. Oh my gosh. What time is it? Okay. You are searching for the magic key that will unlock the door to the source of power, and yet you have the key in your own hands. And you may make use of it the moment you learn to control your thoughts. Place in your mind, through the principle of auto-suggestion, the positive constructive thoughts which harmonize with your definite chief aim in life. And that mind will transform those thoughts into physical reality and hand them back to you as a finished product. That is thought control. When you deliberately choose the thoughts which dominate your mind and firmly refuse admittance to outside suggestion, you are exercising self-control in its highest and most efficient form. Man is the only living animal that can do this. How many millions of years nature has required in which to produce this animal, no one knows. But very intelligent student of psychology knows that the dominating thoughts determine the actions and the nature of the animal. The process through which one may think accurately is a subject that has been reserved for lesson 11 of this course. The point we wish clearly to establish in this lesson is that thought, whether accurate or inaccurate, is the most highly organized functioning power of your mind, and that you are but the sum total of your dominating and most prominent thoughts. If you will be a master salesman, whether of goods and wares or of personal services, you must exercise sufficient self-control to shut out all adverse arguments and suggestions. Most salesmen have so little self-control that they hear the prospective purchaser say no even before he says it. Not a few salesmen heard this fatal word no even before they come into the presence of their prospective purchaser. They have so little self-control that they actually suggest to themselves that their prospective purchaser would say no when asked to purchase their wares. How different is the man of self-control? He not only suggests to himself that his prospective purchaser will say yes, but if desired yes is not forthcoming, he stays on the job until he breaks down the opposition and forces a yes. If his prospective purchaser says no, he does not hear it. If his prospective purchaser says no a second, a third, or fourth time, he does not hear it. For he is a man of self-control, and he permits no suggestions to reach his mind except for those which he desires to influence him. The master salesman, whether he be engaged in selling merchandise or personal services or sermons or public addresses, understands how to control his own thoughts. Instead of being a person who accepts with meek submission the suggestions of others, he is a person who persuades others to accept his suggestion. By controlling himself and placing only positive thoughts in his own mind, he thereby becomes a dominating personality, a master salesman. This too is self-control. A master salesman is one who takes the offensive and never the defensive side of an argument, if argument arises. If you are a master salesman, you know that it's necessary for you to keep your prospective purchaser on the defensive, and you also know that it will be fatal to yourself if you permit him to place you on the defensive and keep you there. You may, and of course you will at times be placed in a position in which you will have to assume the defensive side of the conversation for a time, but it is your business to exercise such perfect poise and self-control that you will change places with your prospective purchaser without noticing that you have done so, by placing him back on the defensive. This requires the most consummate skill and self-control. Most salesmen sweep this vital point aside by becoming angry and try to scare the prospective purchaser into submission, but the master salesman remains calm and serene and usually comes out the winner. The word salesman has reference to all people who try to persuade or convince others by logical argument or appeal to self-interest. We are all salesmen, or at least we should be, no matter what form of service we are rendering or what sort of goods we are offering. The ability to negotiate with other people without friction and argument is the outstanding quality of all successful people. Observe those nearest you and notice how few there are who understand this art of tactful negotiation. Observe also how successful are the few who understand this art, despite the fact that they may have less education than those with whom they negotiate. It is a knack that can be cultivated. The art of successful negotiation grows out of patient and painstaking self-control. Notice how easily the successful salesman exercises self-control when he is handling a customer who is impatient. In his heart, such a salesman may be boiling over, but you will see no evidence of this on his face or in his manner or words. He has acquired the art of tactful negotiation. A single frown of disapproval or a single word denoting impatience would often spoil a sale, and no one knows this better than the successful salesman. He makes it his business to control his feelings, and as a reward, he sets his own salary mark and chooses his own position. Okay, y'all, I got to stop there because I got to finish getting my day started. But like I said, I definitely wanted to make sure I read this to you all to make sure that I'm, of course, doing what I said I was going to do as far as reading this book in total to you all. First, I was giving summaries, but I started reading in total so you all can hear all the words and know all the stuff that's going on. My hair is steady going over, y'all. Lord Jesus. Okay. But like I said, this was lesson number 8, and it's on self-control. This is part 2 of 3. So, of course, like I said, if you haven't heard part 1, go ahead and listen to that part 1 and then come back and listen to this. So like I said, self-control is something that I know that is important. That's something that I've always, of course, growing up, of course, I didn't have much self-control. But, of course, as I grew into young adulthood, my adulthood, that kind of thing, I've had to work on that all the time because sometimes I can say stuff out my mouth or I'm going to get so-and-so back in the day when I was younger, teenager, early 20s. You can't say this to me and I got a bad temper, bad mouth. That's what it was back then. But like I said, I definitely had to work on that over the years, and I still work on that to this day because I know there's always situations, whether it's with family, friends, at work, people I see out in the community, people I'm selling cookies to that may have an attitude, may be upset. I get crazy comments and messages in my inbox online because I do stuff like this and talk about motivation, self-development, all this kind of stuff. So like I said, I have to have my poise and my self-control intact too, because I can go off on everybody and I don't want to ruin I don't want my reputation to be ruined that way. I could put it that way, to say something that I did not mean to say in that moment. I guess I'd say that. So like I said, I know how important self-control is. And like I said, I hope you enjoyed this particular episode. Please put down in the comments, like I said, who you are, not who you, the whole who you are, but just your first name is found, or nickname. I mean, of course, where you're tuning in from. And of course, let me know how self-control has played out in your life, whether you've had to work on your self-control or whether you're a master at your self-control. I definitely want to hear this. So like I said, definitely let me know, y'all. So peace out. My name is Tonetta Clay, and this is the Social Worker Coach Podcast. And like I said on YouTube, hey, y'all, this is Tonetta Clay, of course, my channel. Like I said, definitely make sure y'all subscribe to both. You will see in the description, you'll see the links for both the podcast and my YouTube channel to subscribe and get your butt on my subscribe list. I guess I put it that way. So like I said, definitely thank you all. And like I said, if you know somebody who needs to hear this, I always say, please feel free to share this with them. Do not hesitate. I'm fine with you sharing this to somebody else who may need to hear this. So like I said, peace out, y'all. I'll see you on the next episode. Have a good day.